Hey, what's up guys, iroffen here. And in today's video I'm gonna talk about the first build I've ever made. It ain't much, but it's honest work. It's probably not the best, or probably it's not any good, but I'm proud of it, so I'm gonna share it with you guys. So you might have the question, why Inquisitor, why Armageddon Brand, why not something else? There are many different and probably a lot better brand options. Well, I wanted to play a hybrid character, and I feel like for hybrid characters, Inquisitor is one of the best, if not the best choice. And also I wanted to play Armageddon Brand because I thought it looked fun and I wanted to try it out. Another reason why I picked this instead of something better, something higher investment, is because I wanted to make a build that's a suitable league starter and it's something that can clear higher tier maps on a lower investment level. So what should you expect when you play this build? Well, the leveling was fine. It was both good in the single target and survivability departments, and I think it's a viable league starter. It was a fast leveling and it was a smooth one for sure. Map clearing is also good, it's probably one of the best aspects of this build. It feels very smooth, with the shield charge and swift brand playstyle, and it's pretty fast. We can do most maps under 4 minutes. Single target and bossing isn't bad, however single target damage isn't the best either. We can boss quite safely due to the fact that we can just stand off screen and wait for the boss to die while placing brands on them, but our single target DPS is kind of lacking. Survivability wise it's not the tankiest build, but we do have max attack and spell block, as well as elemental ailment immunity, and we have around a effective health pool of 40k, which isn't bad, but it could be a lot better. Budget wise the build isn't very expensive. We went into red maps with around 1x of investment and we cleared them pretty safely. And the build has a lot of room for min-maxing, and it improves a lot if you can put better gear on it, but it functions extremely well on low investment as well. When it comes to Ascendancy, we went with Inquisitor for two main reasons. First of them being is that with the Pious Path and Sanctuary nodes, it fits very well with the hybrid playstyle, since Pious Path grants us 200 flat energy shield regen per second while on consecrated ground, and since it means that our consecrated ground lingers for 4 seconds, we basically have 100% uptime on that, as well as elemental ailment immunity and 20% increased attack and cast speed, as well as the Sanctuary node giving us 10% increased damage against enemies on consecrated ground, and it creates consecrated ground around us while we are stationary. We also picked up Instruments of Virtue, since because we use shield charge we have the buff from the attack speed, and since we use spells we have the spell damage from casting recently. It fits very well with using Swift Brand, since we have to cast our brands more often than we would normally if we weren't using Swift Brand. As for our last Ascendancy point, we put that in Augury of Penitence for some extra damage and for some extra tankiness. As for our bandit choice we went with Kill All, since we need the 2 extra skill points and no bandit does much for us. When it comes to our skill links, we run Armageddon Brand in a 6th link, linked with Swift Brand, Control Destruction, Inspiration, Combustion and Immolate. Swift Brand works very well with Instruments of Virtue, and it's one of the main reasons that's why we went hybrid Inquisitor, since it sacrifices brand duration for brand activation frequency, which means that our brands have a smaller uptime, however they deal more damage. Now with Instruments of Virtue it's not really a problem, since we have to cast our brands more often, we have a higher uptime on Instruments of Virtue. Control Destruction gives us a nice 44% more damage modifier, without any of the downsides, since we don't really need the crit chance since we have Elemental Overlord, and because we are a fire skill, crits wouldn't do much for us anyways. Inspiration gives us a good amount of damage as well. It gives us 35% more elemental damage while we are on max charges, as well as making Armageddon Brand cheaper, which is a nice quality of life improvement. Also, since we use Swift Brand, we cast Armageddon Brand often enough to be basically always at maximum inspiration charges. Combustion provides another nice damage boost, since it reduces the target's fire resistance as well as providing a more fire damage modifier and a chance to ignite. It works very well with Immolate, since Immolate gives us a flat fire damage against ignited enemies and we have a 99% chance to ignite enemies, so it basically also has a 100% uptime, which is pretty good. We also have Cremation in a 4-link setup, since it gives us a nice bit of damage boost. We can create 3 geysers shooting 8 projectiles each, and for me they deal around 42k damage each. We link it with Elemental Focus, since the enemies are already ignited by the time we use Cremation by our Ignite chance on our brand, so it's basically just a 49% more damage modifier. We use Immolate because they are already ignited, as I said, and it's a flat damage boost, and we use GMP because more projectiles mean more hits, which is nice, and this gives us a higher chance to proc Elemental Overlord. As for our auras, we use Anger because it gives us a hefty amount of flat fire, which is very nice. We use Herald of Ash since the overkill damage and the explosions that come from that give us a very nice bit of clear, which isn't bad either, but it's a really nice boost to it, and also it provides burning and spell fire damage, which is also very nice. And we use Aspect of the Spider, since it gives us a bit of survivability by hindering enemies around us, as well as making them take 5% increased damage for each stack of spiders web on them, up to 15%. However, in order to comfortably fit Aspect of the Spider, we need both a Circle of Anguish with reduced Herald of Ash mana reservation and an Enlightened Gem. We can do it with one or the other one, but this way is much more comfortable and we won't run into mana problems as we would otherwise. We use Tempest Shield to give us the last bit of spell block chance we need in order to be both attack and spell blocked. We use Shield Charge as our movement skill, since we have to have an attack skill in order to proc the attacked recently parts of Instrument of Virtue, and I've chosen Skill Charge because it works quite smoothly in my opinion. We link it with 45 for the 45 buff obviously, and with faster attacks, since with this and with the Instrument of Virtue extra attack speed and with the Consecrated Ground extra attack speed, we have a high enough attack speed to shield charge around pretty comfortably and for it not to feel very clunky. We use Wave of Conviction for the fire exposure it gives us, making enemies hit by it have 25% less fire resistance. Also, before you can get yourself a flammability on hit ring, you would ideally want to link your flammability curse with curse on hit to Wave of Conviction. We also have Brand Recall to recall our brands, so that, you know, when we run into a pack we can press that and then boom! We also have Desecrate to create corpses in boss rooms, so that we can use Cremation there. And we also have Enduring Cry, which gives us up to 3 endurance charges, and it can also be a good bit of health regen in dire situations. We pick up 3 keystones from the skill tree. We pick up Glancing Blows, Elemental Overlord, and Runebinder. Glancing Blows doubles our block chance, making us max block, but we take 50% of the damage from the hits we block, but it's still worth it. We pick up Elemental Overlord, since we use a fire skill and therefore crit multi isn't very useful for us, and the 40% more elemental damage is way better. And we pick up Runebinder, which gives us the ability to attach 2 brands to one enemy, which essentially doubles our damage. Before I go into our item choices in depth, I just wanna say that we in general log dexterity, so we wanna pick it up wherever we can. For our weapon we ideally want a scepter, and for this the Void Scepter is the best base. It beats out the Somber Scepter by a bit, damage wise, and we look for percentage increased fire damage, flat fire damage to spells, percentage increased spell damage, and if you have the money for it, you should look for a +1 level of all fire spell skill gems mod. When it comes to our shield, we ideally want a high block chance base. It doesn't really matter whether or not it's a strength int base or just normal int base, and we want life, resist, preferably some energy shield on it, and here again, if we can afford, picking up a plus level of all fire spell skill gems mod is ideal. It gives us a nice bit of damage. For our helmet, we use a Crown of the Inward Eye since it gives us both damage and defenses, and it's also pretty cheap to get our enchant on it. We prefer the Armageddon Brand Damage Penetrates 12% of branded enemies fire resistance enchant. It gives us a bit more damage than the 40% increase to Armageddon Brand damage. But if you like to, you can get a influenced item base and go crazy with it. You could get minus fire resistance to nearby enemies on it, but I think still overall the Crown of the Inward Eye is our best choice. For our body armor we want something 6 linked, and it's pretty basic. We basically just want life and resist on it. If we can fit in, we want some energy shield as well, and you can go crazy with things such as explode emote. However, it's not really needed since our clear is pretty good in itself. For our gloves, we ideally want life and resist on it. If we can fit in, obviously some energy shield isn't bad, and under one hit is a very good mod for us. It gives us a pretty significant amount of damage boost. However, it's not very cheap to get, but if you have the funds, you should definitely try and get an under glove. For our boots, we want pretty standard boots with life and movement speed on them. If we need some additional resistances, we can get them here as well, and if we can fit in some ES, it's very good for our life pool, but it's not at all needed. For our amulet, we would ideally want an item level 83 Warlord Jade Amulet, since with this it allows us to get the +1 level of fire skill gems mod, which gives us a good bit of damage. With that we also want to pick up some life on it, and since it's already Warlord influence, we can get the percentage fire damage mod, which is also a good bit of damage boost. For our rings, we would ideally want a item level 83 Warlord influence ring, since it allows us to get flammability on hit. Alongside with flammability on hit, we would ideally want some life and maybe some resistances on it. For our other ring slot, we would ideally get a Circle of Anguish with reduced Herald of Ash mana reservation and increased fire damage while affected by Herald of Ash. With the reduced Herald of Ash mana reservation, it allows us to run Aspect of the Spider more comfortably than we could with only just Enlighten. For our belt, we would ideally want a Stygian Wise, since any Abyss Jewel is better than the other belt implicits. We preferably want life and resistances on it, and for Abyss Jewel, we would want flat fire damage to spells, which can come as is, or it could also come as while holding a shield, with life and any other quality of life mod, such as movement speed. For our unique flasks, we would ideally want an Aziri's Promise and a Cinder's Hollow Urn, since they both give us nice damage and sustain. For our magic flasks, we need an instant heal flask, preferably a Divine Life flask base, since that heals us for the most, a Quicksilver flask and a Granite flask. On our life and Quicksilver flasks, we need bleed immunity and curse immunity, and on our granite flask we would ideally want the 80% increased armor during flask effect mode, since it gives us around 30% reduced physical damage taken. For our class pillar jewel, we would want a brand image base, preferably with 4 nodes, and of those 4 we would preferably want 2 brand image nodes. On our regular jewels, we would ideally want life and percentage increased chance to block spell damage by holding a shield. If we have these two, we can choose any damage mod to go alongside with them. For example, increased fire damage, increased spell damage, or increased damage. All in all, I think this is a very fun to play build. It has a very satisfying playstyle and it clears even tier 14 to tier 16 maps with ease, even on a lower budget. The single target damage isn't the best, but with some manual dodging, bossing is completely fine and doable. Also, there is the added benefit of fire builds not being terribly popular, which means that you can get decent gear for cheaper than on many other builds. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below or ask them over at my Twitch. I'm live every day at twitch.tv/iroffen. Stay safe for now and see you next time.